What is up, you guys? My name is Roman, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And today I'm going to be watching and reacting to Why Every Dead Kaiju Made Things Worse by Bullets and Spandex. This is a new channel I'm reacting to. I've never heard of them, but I saw this in my recommendations and thought it looked cool, so I'm going to react to it. And this is I think about the kaiju in Pacific Rim and how because I think they have like toxic blue on them. They're like these like toxic like their blood is blue and toxic. So I think that's what it's about. But yeah, let's get started.
Forget about the teeth, forget about the claws, forget about the tails that could level skyscrapers in a single swipe. None of that is actually the most dangerous thing about Pacific Rim's kaiju. The most dangerous thing about a kaiju is the stuff running through its veins, a glowing neon blue chemical nightmare that we call kaiju blue.
Yeah, kaiju blue, that's what it's called.
And it doesn't care whether you're an enemy soldier, a civilian standing 3 blocks away, or a Jaeger pilot who just saved the city. Because here's the brutal irony at the heart of the entire Pacific Rim universe. Every time humanity won a battle against the kaiju, they were also, slowly and invisibly, losing the planet. The blood of the enemy was the real weapon of mass destruction, and people didn't really understand that until it was almost too late. But before we explain what the hell Kaiju Blue actually is, maybe subscribe to the channel, hype the video, like the video, leave a comment, all that fun stuff. And
Yeah, make sure you subscribe to Span uh what was it? Uh Bullets and Spandex. I will link them below.
to that massive percentage of you that watches our videos but doesn't subscribe, could you do us a solid? It really helps. Anyway, what the hell is Kaiju Blue really?
Mhm.
First up, a big thank you to the Kaiju Posting Tumblr blog for collecting and collating all of this important data. Let's start with the chemistry, because once you understand what Kaiju Blue actually is at a molecular level, everything else about Pacific Rim's universe clicks into place in a kind of horrifying way.
Right.
Unlike every living creature on Earth, which runs on iron-based hemoglobin suspended in water, Kaiju are not carbon-based organisms at all. Guillermo del Toro confirmed at New York Comic Con that kaiju are
It's pronounced Guillermo del Toro. Whatever.
silicon-based life forms, an entirely different branch of biochemistry that evolution on Earth never explored because, frankly, it didn't have to. Silicon can form long molecular chains, similar to carbon, but its interactions with oxygen are fundamentally different. And that difference is what makes Kaiju Blue catastrophically dangerous.
Yeah.
The blood of a kaiju is ammonia-based, a high-pressure, high-energy chemical solvent that exists in a stable state only under the crushing atmospherical and physiological pressures inside a kaiju's body. The moment that fluid is exposed to Earth's nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, the reaction is instantaneous and violent. The bioluminescent glow, the eerie blue light bleeding from every kaiju wound, is not just aesthetic, it's an oxidation process, occurring at a molecular level. Essentially, a slow chemical fire triggers the second the alien's blood meets the air. And Del Toro himself described what happens next in very stark terms. It melts the pavement, melts the structures around it, makes a noxious gas. That's not poetic license, it's actual chemistry. Ammonia.
Yeah, it's pretty toxic, but this is good because like I mean I already knew about it, but like I think this video breaks down like it in full detail. Like maybe it'll teach me like the chemistry of behind it, which it has started to, but like yeah, so it's starting to teach me more about it. So I think it's cool so far, and I also think that well, Kaiju Blue it's also like in their spit, like right, Otachi spit acid at Cherno Alpha, and that highly damaged the Cherno Alpha, the Russian Jaeger. It highly damaged that Jaeger, so yeah, it makes sense.
in concentrated forms has a pH level high enough to dissolve concrete, corrode metals, and contaminate groundwater on contact. But the gas
Oh,
is arguably worse. Ammonia vapor in concentrations released by a dying kaiju cause rapid respiratory failure in humans, burning the mucous membranes of the lungs and causing pulmonary edema. Essentially, you drown in your body's own fluids, which it's producing in response to the chemical assault.
yikes.
The Pan Pacific Defense Corps developed the designation Kaiju Blue, not just for the blood itself, but for the entire phenomenon: the blood mist, the ground contamination, the vapor dispersion. K Science Division recorded that when a kaiju's body begins to decompose after death, the blood converts into a volatile, gaseous state called blood mist, which disperses far more widely than liquid contamination ever could. A kaiju killed in a pop.
You know what's weird? Um, total side, kind of, kind of a bit of a side note, but if if like if these people right here are wearing, even though they're wearing protection, wouldn't it still go through them like the acid, and like wouldn't hold on, wouldn't Dr. Newton Geisler here be, if how is he not affected by it? Unless it's like decontaminated, I don't know.
The blood converts into a volatile, gaseous state called blood mist, which disperses far more widely than liquid contamination ever could. A kaiju killed in a populated area didn't just destroy the buildings in its path. The blood mist it generated afterward could contaminate an entire district, rendering it uninhabitable for generations. Here's the detail that doesn't get talked about enough. Kaiju Blue stains everything it touches. And we're
Exactly.
not just talking about surfaces, it penetrates human skin.
Mhm.
Costume designer Kate Hawley, working on the film's production design, described the concept this way: the blue blood gets into people's bodies, and you can see traces of it coming through breathing masks, a subtle, creeping poison that doesn't announce itself until the damage is already done. That's why the Shatterdome crews wear full hazmat gear around kaiju carcasses. Even a sealed environment isn't entirely safe. And then there's the rare earth element reaction, a detail Pacific Rim Uprising expanded on significantly. Kaiju Blue is explosive in the presence of rare earth metals. Dr. Hermann Gottlieb discovered that exposing kaiju blood to these elements produces extremely catastrophic energy release, enough to be weaponized as a propellant, or in the precursor's plan, enough to trigger a volcanic chain reaction. But I'll get to that. The bottom line is this: Kaiju Blue is not a flaw in the design. It is, as the evidence increasingly suggests, the entire point. A multi-layered environmental weapon that destroys through contact, through gas, through long-term contamination, and through
Yeah, see, there's Otachi spitting.
catastrophic reaction, engineered to rewrite the fundamental chemistry of our world. Every drop of it that hit the ground was a step in a plan humanity wouldn't understand until it was almost too late.
Hmm.
And here is how our biggest weapon made everything worse. And everyone in the comments keeps going on about this, so pay attention. On August 10th, 2013, a date that Pacific Rim Universe calls K-Day, a 7.1 magnitude earthquake rattled the San Francisco Bay. Except, of course, it was not an earthquake, it was Trespasser, a 302-foot, 2,780-ton biological weapon
AKA Axehead.
rising from the Pacific Ocean and destroying the Golden Gate Bridge before most of the city had any idea what they were even looking at. Over the next 6 days, Trespasser cut a 35-mile path of destruction through San Francisco, Sacramento, and Oakland. The combined forces of the United States military and the British Royal Air Force threw everything they had at it: tanks, artillery, fighter jets, ground troops. None of it even made a dent. Trespasser's hide was essentially impervious to conventional weaponry. It swatted F-22s out of the sky like they were insects. Tens of thousands of people were killed. Then on August 15th, 2013, with no options left, military command authorized something they had hoped never to use in a populated region ever again: 3 tactical nuclear missiles. It took all 3 to bring Trespasser down. When the creature finally fell, its death demonstrated exactly why the nuclear option was the worst possible solution to the kaiju problem. The nukes
Yeah.
did not just kill the kaiju, they aerosolized its blood. The explosive force of 3 tactical nuclear strikes vaporized Trespasser's Kaiju Blue reserves and flash scattered them across the atmosphere in a dispersal pattern that liquid contamination could never achieve.
Yeah, that's double contamination right
The
there.
Bay Area
That's double can. That's double can. I can't speak. That's double contamination right there.
Area wasn't just left radioactive from the nuclear fallout, which is already bad. It was chemically poisoned by kaiju blue blood mist spread across thousands of square miles. The San Francisco Bay Area was subsequently designated the San Francisco Exclusion Zone, uninhabitable, not for decades, but for centuries. The
Whoa.
math is devastating in its simplicity. A nuclear strike concentrates the kaiju blue problem into a very small area and immediately explodes it into a massive one. The liquid stays where it falls, sure. The blood mist travels with wind currents, settles into water tables, contaminates soil at a molecular level. Using nukes against the kaiju is not winning. It's accelerating the precursor's terraforming agenda. Now, there are keyboard warriors saying that hydrogen bombs would be able to vaporize every aspect of the kaiju blood. That might be true from a physics perspective, but you have to remember, then you're dealing with tremendous amounts of nuclear fallout.
Yeah.
Not to mention the permanent destruction of populated areas that will also have long-term knock-on effects. So the nuclear option really is the worst one. So if all of the amateur nuclear physicists in the comments could just pipe down about hydrogen bombs and nuclear yield and all of that fun stuff, because even if you're right, it would make the movies boring, and that would be the worst thing ever. So just be cool, okay? Anyway, this is the paradox.
Exactly. Well, hey man, that's why they made Jaegers, so they could not so they could like not use nukes anymore and just have a safer way to take out the kaiju. Plus that's what Hannibal, and then even if there's like a corpse there that's toxic for the environment, Hannibal Chow's group comes and I forget what they're called, but like they make it non-toxic, and they make it like they remove the organs and they turn the bones into like medicines for people. So yeah.
That the United Nations finally confronted on September 15th, 2014. In an emergency summit in Seoul, South Korea, the question on the table was pretty stark. How do you kill something the size of a building in the middle of a city without poisoning the planet in the process?
Mhm.
Nuclear weapons were off the table, conventional munitions were useless, and the kaiju were coming back. Handun had attacked Manila 6 months after K-Day. Kaisef had hit Cabo San Lucas 4 months after that. Shkizur had attacked Sydney on September 2nd, 2014. This was clearly not a one-time event, as much as it was an invasion with a clear cadence, and humanity had no weapon that could meet it. It was at that summit that a pilot named Stacker Pentecost, serving as a mere liaison at the time, posed the question that changed everything. And it was Dr. Jasper Schoenfield's answer to that question, the idea of massive humanoid mechs controlled by human pilots, that became the Jaeger program.
Yep.
Not just because giant robots are super cool, but because they seemed like the best engineering solution that could kill monsters without poisoning the planet killing them was supposed to protect.
There you go.
The nuclear fallacy taught humanity its most important lesson about kaiju warfare. The method of the kill matters as much as the kill itself. You can win every battle and still lose the war if every victory saturates another 100 square miles of coastline with either ammonia-based chemical contamination or nuclear fallout. The Jaeger program wasn't born from military ambition so much as environmental desperation. How the Jaegers were built around Kaiju Blue. Here's something the movies show you without ever quite explaining it outright. The Jaeger program wasn't just about building machines big enough to fight the kaiju. Every single design decision, from the choice of close quarters melee over ranged bombardment, to the very specific heat thresholds of plasma casters, to the molecular composition of chain sword alloys, was a direct
You mean plasma cannons?
engineering response to the problem that was Kaiju Blue. The Jaegers weren't built to be cool, that was a side effect. They were built to contain a chemical disaster, while simultaneously creating a new one. Think about what conventional munitions do to a kaiju. A missile, high-caliber, armor-piercing round. Any projectile that successfully penetrates kaiju hide creates entry and possibly exit wounds that function like pressurized nozzles for Kaiju Blue. The kinetic energy of the round doesn't just damage the tissue, it forces blood outward at high velocity, spraying contamination across the battlefield in a radius that could render the surrounding area toxic in seconds. Even a successful kill with ballistic weapons creates an environmental cleanup operation measured in months and tens of millions of dollars. The Pan-Pacific Defense Corps established clear engineering mandates for Jaeger weapons development. Every weapon system had to satisfy three simultaneous requirements. First, penetration power sufficient to breach kaiju armor, which could be several feet thick and reinforced with silicon-based biological structures, unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary history. Second, wound cauterization capability, to seal the tissue damage the moment it was inflicted and prevent kaiju blue from escaping the carcass. Third, reliability under extreme combat conditions. These weapons had to function after a Jaeger had been thrown through skyscrapers, dragged underwater, slammed by forces equivalent to small earthquakes. The melee first philosophy wasn't just about getting close to the enemy, it was about controlling the wounds. A closed fist punch from a Jaeger caused massive internal hemorrhaging, broken bones, ruptured organs, catastrophic circulatory failure without breaking the skin. The kaiju blue stays inside the body, the carcass contains the contamination. That's why even the earliest Mark I Jaegers, like my goat Cherno Alpha, with the Tesla fists delivering 415 kilovolt electrical discharges, were designed to stun and disable from the inside out, rather than tear the kaiju apart from the outside in.
That makes sense. And yeah, Cherno Alpha is my favorite Jaeger too. He's my favorite Jaeger in Pacific Rim, and it's a shame it got destroyed because I love it. And although it has electric discharges, it wasn't enough to. Apparently, it wasn't enough to like protect it from the acid because it still got damaged a little bit.
You hit them where it can't spill. Shout out to my boy Cherno Alpha. When
Right.
cutting was necessary, and sometimes it absolutely was, the engineering had to be flawless. The GD6 chainsword on Gypsy Danger was forged from a steel obsidian alloy. And yes, I know, keyboard warriors, I know that you can't actually alloy steel and obsidian. But again, rule of cool
You can't.
always wins. So just be cool,
Right.
you know?
Suspend your disbelief.
Anyway, there's a specific reason for the steel obsidian alloy. Obsidian is volcanic glass, which maintains a cutting edge at a molecular level, which produces cleaner cuts than any manufactured metal ever could. Cleaner cuts mean smaller wounds. Smaller wounds mean less kaiju blue exposure. The chainsword mechanism could also transition from rigid blade to segmented whip, which allowed pilots to adapt their approach mid-combat. But in every mode, the goal was the same: clean incisions, not explosive trauma. The I-19 plasma caster mounted on Gypsy Danger represented the breakthrough moment in anti-kaiju environmental weaponry. Ionized gas, plasma
Or as it's called now, plasma cannon. But I guess it wasn't called that until Pacific Rim Uprising, I guess. So in the first movie it's called Plasma Caster, and I think that's how it is.
heated to extreme temperatures, was generated in containment chambers within the Jaeger's arms, then accelerated through electromagnetic carrier rails. When the plasma bolt struck kaiju tissue, it did two things simultaneously. With the kinetic energy, it penetrated through the hide, and with thermal ablation, it instantly cauterized the wound channel, vaporizing the tissue at the point of contact and sealing the surrounding area against kaiju blue leakage.
Oh.
That's the kind of thing that the hydrogen bomb enthusiasts would have hoped would happen from a hydrogen bomb, but, without the nuclear fallout problem.
Right.
For the first time, humanity had a weapon that was both lethally effective and environmentally clean in a single shot. Later iterations refined this further. Saber Athena's ionic twin blades were plasma-infused swords that could combine into a single weapon. It didn't just cut through physical resistance, though. The ionic field burned the kaiju tissue at the molecular level, while the blade edge was cutting, creating a simultaneous wound and seal effect that made even extended melee engagements dramatically safer from a contamination standpoint. And the dual plasma chainsaws later found on Gypsy Avenger, originally part of Obsidian Fury's weapons package, maintained constant contact with the target, while the plasma field cauterized tissue in real time. Even Striker Eureka's WMB-2X90 anti-kaiju missile system was engineered with kaiju blue in mind. Each of the 18 K-Stunner warheads combined a shaped charge explosive with thermal incendiary compounds that ignited at temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius upon detonation. The shaped charges drove deep into the kaiju's body cavity, minimizing external damage, and then the incendiary cauterized the wound channel from the inside. Striker Eureka achieved 11 confirmed kaiju kills over its service life, the highest of any Jaeger. in no small part because its weapons were designed to end fights decisively and cleanly. The engineering philosophy that emerged from a decade of Jaeger development can be summarized in a single principle: contain the kill. Every weapon system on every Jaeger was, at its core, a response to the fundamental problem that killing a kaiju created as many environmental hazards as the kaiju itself. The Jaeger program wasn't just humanity's army, it was, simultaneously, humanity's most sophisticated environmental protection system. Check out our video about the Jaeger weapon systems if you want more on that. Kaiju
Noted.
Blue was always the plan. Everything in the previous sections, the ammonia chemistry, the nuclear disaster, the desperate engineering pivot, was humanity reacting, scrambling, playing catch-up against an invasion that it didn't really understand. But this is about pulling the camera back and looking at what the precursors actually built, what they actually wanted, and why Kaiju Blue is not a biological byproduct of a silicon-based cloned life form. It is an intentional delivery mechanism for the most ambitious terraforming operation in planetary history. Here's the timeline that makes everything slide into place. The precursors, a race of colonizing extra-dimensional beings whose civilization is described as so fundamentally alien that looking into their eyes would be terrifying. They didn't arrive in
You got that right, because they do look pretty terrifying.
2013. They were here before, during the Triassic period. Hundreds of millions mentally alien that looking into their eyes would be terrifying. They didn't arrive in 2013. They were here before, during the Triassic period, hundreds of millions of years ago.
That's right, I remember hearing that.
They opened a breach in the Pacific Ocean and sent scouts to evaluate Earth for colonization. The conclusion? The atmosphere was incompatible with their biology. Not enough carbon dioxide, too much oxygen. The conditions were wrong, so they closed the breach, retreated to the antiverse, and they waited. They waited for hundreds of millions of years, and while they waited, humanity happened to evolve and industrialize, and then spent 2 centuries systematically doing something remarkable. We accidentally terraformed our own planet for precursor compatibility. Carbon dioxide levels.
That's interesting. Well, I knew it was the dinosaurs, but I didn't know it was Triassic, but it makes sense.
And then spent 2 centuries systematically doing something remarkable. We accidentally terraformed our own planet for precursor compatibility. Carbon dioxide levels rose, the ozone layer thinned, oceans warmed, pollution saturated the atmosphere, and in the antiverse, the precursors watched a monitoring situation flip from not yet to, how about now? In Newton Geisler's words, paraphrasing what he saw when he drifted with a kaiju brain, well, we practically terraformed it for them, because now they're coming back and it's perfect. That might be the core horror of the Pacific Rim universe delivered in one line of dialogue. Every factory, power plant, and coal-burning century of industrial civilization was humanity doing the precursors' preparatory work for them without even knowing it.
Oh.
So, August 10th, 2013 was not the start of an invasion. It was the start of the final phase of a process that had been in motion for geological time. And the kaiju weren't a weapon, not really. The kaiju were just a delivery system. The weapon was Kaiju Blue. Every kaiju that bled on a coast.
Well, I would argue that. Well, I'm not sure about that. I would argue that. I mean, that is the weapon inside of them, but like, they carry it. Like they are the ultimate weapon. I would say, because their whole bodies are weapons and they shoot it. Like they're altogether. That's a weapon to me. Like I would like that's just like saying that you have a gun, but you say the bullet is the ultimate weapon, not the gun, when the gun is the one that does the firing. So you know what I mean? Like that does that make sense? Yeah.
Coastal city was raising the local ammonia concentration in the groundwater. Every carcass decomposing into blood mist was introducing precursor-compatible chemistry into the atmosphere in an expanding radius. Over 12 years of the Kaiju War, from K-Day in 2013 to the closure of the breach in January 2025, the Kaiju didn't just attack cities. They systematically worked to chemically convert Earth's biosphere, neighborhood by neighborhood, section by section, into something that could sustain precursor life. But the uprising reveals the true endgame, and it's the most terrifying moment of world building in the entire franchise, really. Kaiju Blue reacts explosively with rare earth metals. Dr. Hermann Gottlieb didn't just discover this as an academic curiosity. He realized, too late, that the precursors had always known it. The kaiju were converging, not randomly on cities, but specifically on Mount Fuji,
Oh yeah, that's right. We were just in the way.
a dormant volcano sitting atop one of the richest deposits of rare earth elements in the world. The plan, as Gottlieb eventually pieced it together, get a mega kaiju, a gestalt creation formed by the fusion of three high category level kaiju to the summit of Mount Fuji and rupture it. The Kaiju Blue, reacting with the rare earth metals inside the volcano, would produce an explosion powerful enough to trigger the Pacific Ring of Fire, which sounds like what happens when you eat too much Taco Bell. What it actually
Okay, that's funny. I like that. Throwing a little joke there.
is a chain of volcanic eruptions running the entire length of the Pacific Ocean. The resulting pyroclastic material would block sunlight, temperatures would plummet, the oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere that humans depend on would just be shattered, and in the ash and the cold and the chemical aftermath, something that breathes ammonia and lives in the antiverse's red sky wastelands would finally find home. The kaiju were not attacking Earth, they were just renovating a new apartment. Every city they destroyed, every drop of kaiju blue that entered the water table, every plume of blood mist that drifted inland on the wind was all construction work. Slow, patient, centuries in the making preparation for a tenant who'd been watching our planet since before the age of dinosaurs and had decided.
I mean, they were attacking, but like they just weren't. They didn't intend to attack. Like they were, yeah, they were just renovating, as you said. But like they didn't intend to attack, even though they were.
Decided at last that we'd done enough of the renovation work for them. So, did closing the breach actually save us? Here's the question that the Pacific Rim community has been chewing on since Uprising rolled credits, and that the franchise has never fully answered. The breach is closed. The kaiju creation facility in the Antiverse is destroyed. But what happened to 12 years worth of kaiju blue that's already in our oceans? This is the fan theory that keeps resurfacing on every Reddit thread, every Discord deep dive, every lore analysis video in the Pacific Rim community. Because here's what the film.
Yeah, that really is. I still gotta continue watching more of the Pacific Rim the Pacific Rim, the anime adaptation of Pacific Rim, The Black, because I left off at the end of season one, but I might watch it. Might watch more of it soon because maybe they explain it there, but I could be wrong. But either way, I don't know. Maybe this was made before this video, but I don't know.
Films confirm 46 kaiju came through the breach between 2013 and 2015. Every single one of them bled. Many of them died inside the ocean. Gypsy Danger's final battle with Raiju, Scunner, and Slattern was fought at the bottom of the Pacific. That's 3 Category 4 and 5 kaiju, plus Gypsy Danger's own nuclear detonation, all going off in the same underwater location. The Pacific Ocean's floor around the breach site is, in the words of the Pacific Rim Wiki, a glowing blue graveyard of decomposing kaiju carcasses, slowly leaching kaiju blue into the water column, and the breach closing doesn't clean any of that up. The canon confirms that as the war progressed and kaiju attacks became more frequent, hazmat cleanup became impossible. In the early years, dedicated teams were dispatched after every kill to remove toxic remains and neutralize the kaiju blue. By 2024, when 13 kaiju attacked in a single year, those teams couldn't keep pace at all. Bodies were left where they fell. The contamination ran. The Pacific Rim Wiki documents this directly. Kaiju carcasses were simply abandoned as the tempo of the war made cleanup logistically impossible, their blood leaching into surrounding ecosystems without any intervention. So what does 12 years of accumulated kaiju blue actually do to the Pacific Ocean? This is where the science-grounded fan speculation gets pretty unsettling. The confirmed chemistry tells us kaiju blue is ammonia-based and highly reactive. What it doesn't tell us, and what the franchise has conspicuously avoided answering, is what the long-term baseline saturation of an entire ocean with ammonia-based alien chemistry produces over decades. Real-world ammonia contamination in marine environments causes rapid oxygen depletion, kills coral ecosystems, and creates massive dead zones in the water column. Now, scale that to alien ammonia chemistry, silicon-based biology, and quantities produced by creatures measured in thousands of tons each. And fans argue that the Pacific Ocean in the post-war world isn't recovering, it's still changing. There's a second thread of fan speculation that's arguably much darker, and it runs through Newton Geisler's storyline in Uprising. Newton drifted with kaiju brains multiple times without proper medical protocol, and the precursors used those repeated drifts to slowly infiltrate and control his mind. Fans have long speculated that
That's right.
this wasn't purely a neural contamination.
Oh.
The leading theory, Kaiju Blue, has a neurological vector. The blood mist that stains human skin and penetrates breathing masks doesn't just cause respiratory damage.
You mean it wasn't the precursors, but rather the Kaiju Blue that they created?
At even trace levels absorbed slowly over years of exposure, fans argue it may act as a psychochemical agent, lowering cognitive resistance, creating susceptibility to hive mind influence, explaining why the K-Science Division's most brilliant minds both showed signs of psychological instability after prolonged kaiju exposure. Newton Geisler didn't just drift too many times, he breathed in too much, and the precursors knew what that would eventually do to a human brain. The canon, of course, doesn't confirm this, but it doesn't deny it either, and the production design team's deliberate decision to show Kaiju Blue staining, permeating, even through protective equipment, visibly entering human bodies over time, plants exactly this seed. It's the kind of detail that only matters if it means something. If Kaiju Blue is purely a physical toxin, you don't need costume designers encoding it into character biology across an entire decade of warfare. But if it's also a slow neurochemical agent designed to prepare human hosts for precursor control, suddenly Newton's arc isn't a story about one man drifting a little too much. It's a story about a man who was poisoned first and manipulated second. And then there's what fans call the Reckoner problem, one of the most underappreciated details in all of Pacific Rim lore. The Kaiju Reckoner was killed during its attack on Hong Kong in 2016. Its carcass was left where it fell. Black market operators, working under Hannibal Chow, developed chemical neutralization methods for Kaiju
That's it, the black marketers.
Blue, specifically to harvest the body without hazmat gear, and it worked well enough that a shantytown eventually grew up around Reckoner's bones. People were living in the shadow of a kaiju carcass. The fans' question is immediate and very obvious. If black market operators could develop Kaiju Blue neutralization chemistry by 2016, why wasn't that technology scaled and deployed to decontaminate every exclusion zone? Why is the San Francisco exclusion zone still listed as uninhabitable for centuries? Either the technology doesn't scale, or someone doesn't want it to. The last possibility has generated its own corner of Pacific Rim fan theories, centered on the post-war political economy of Kaiju Blue. The black market for kaiju organs was worth billions, according to Hannibal Chow. Every part of a kaiju was usable, even, as Chow notes with characteristic elegance, the kaiju crap. If Kaiju Blue can be neutralized and the carcasses made accessible, that's an astronomical resource base. Fans argue that the PPDC's failure to aggressively decontaminate the exclusion zones wasn't purely a logistical failure, it was controlled scarcity. Keep the zones uninhabitable, control access to neutralization technology, and let the black market do what black markets always do, enrich the people closest to it, while the displaced populations of Hong Kong, Manila, and the Bay Area wait generations to go home. None of this is in the films. All of it is in the negative space the films deliberately leave behind. And that is what makes Kaiju Blue one of the most compelling pieces of world building
Is it also in the comics?
in the Pacific Rim universe. It's not what it does on screen, but what it implies is still happening, invisibly, long after the credits have rolled, and the breach is closed, and humanity has declared victory. The contamination doesn't care about the victory, it just keeps doing its job.
Wow.
So, what does Kaiju Blue really mean? When you watch Pacific Rim and you see the neon blue glow bleeding from a kaiju wound, here's what you're actually looking at. The
or the mouth.
signature of an alien bioweapon refined over hundreds of millions of years, engineered to be toxic to every life form that evolved on this planet, reactive to the specific geological composition of our most volatile regions, and designed to persist in the environment long after the creature carrying it is dead. The Jaeger pilots were not fighting for glory. They weren't fighting to prove that humanity could punch back against something impossible. They were fighting, with every plasma caster shot, every cauterized chainsword slash, every precisely engineered containment system, to keep the very chemistry of Earth's atmosphere from being replaced with something that wants us gone. Kaiju Blue is the true antagonist of Pacific Rim. Not Slattern, not the precursors, the substance itself. Patient, pervasive, and absolutely relentless. It doesn't stop when the kaiju dies. It doesn't care about Jaegers or walls or nuclear warheads. It just keeps going, doing what it was engineered to do, one contaminated coastline at a time. And the question that fans have been asking since 2013, the one I can't fully answer, is whether closing the breach was an ending or just a pause. Because the kaiju are gone, but the blue is still in the water, and it's still doing what it was designed to do.
And kaiju do keep coming back, so that obviously means they aren't gone. Both as these mutants, these mutant Jaegers, and more kaiju. But that was just because like when they briefly opened breaches, they did bring in more kaiju. So obviously means they're still around, right? But yeah,
But hey, that's just our opinion. What are your thoughts? Next time you watch Pacific Rim, maybe look for the blue staining the clothes, the skin, the masks. It was always there. You just didn't know what it meant. Let us know in the comments what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, please. I know so many of you are not subscribed. And if you're on your phone, hype the video and leave a weird emoji in the comments so that we know you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next.
all right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. This is 28 minutes long, so it's kind of on the longer side, but it was totally worth it. It was this was a very highly intense and highly detailed video. Um, so much details, and I'm glad he broke it down. And yeah, it just looks, and yeah, just there's just so much more to the kaiju in Pacific Rim than we thought about it, and with Kaiju Blue. So, but yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, possibly share it with a friend, and if you're new, hit the subscribe button to my channel, and make sure you also subscribe to um um Bat Bullets and Spandex. The link is in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye bye.